MBA fans and friends, Nicole Wilson. I serve as Vice President of Economic Development with the Midland Business Alliance. I am pleased this morning to have an opportunity to share an initiative that the Midland Business Alliance has been working on for a couple of years. Today I am joined by a great friend and colleague who really needs no introduction. Jennifer Acosta serves as our lead for Housing Forward here with the MBA. And so to get started, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Jennifer Acosta. I'm the lead consultant for Housing Forward here at the Midland Business Alliance. I've been actively working on Housing Forward for the past 2 years. As a real estate development professional, I started working with Housing Forward really to figure out how we could work on the attainable housing ecosystem. And as a practitioner myself who has built housing, how do we really look at solving challenges and getting more attainable housing throughout Midland County?
Thank you. And certainly as a developer, you have quite a long list of projects that you have been involved in and been recognized for. So if you'd like to, you're welcome to take an opportunity to talk about that for a moment, or we can dive right in.
I'll share briefly. This year will be 10 years that since I moved back to the area and started a real estate development firm. I've completed about 5-6 projects in those 10 years, so a lot of them housing and adaptive reuse of existing buildings. I think the interesting thing about real estate development is we have such an opportunity within this area. And for me personally, one of my favorite things about working in Housing Forward is that ability to come and help develop other people's projects and to provide that, we call it technical assistance. I often joke to Nicole that I essentially get to quarterback for other people's projects. And when I talk to other developers, it's kind of that sense of, put me in, coach. Like, what do you need? What's the play? How can I help?
Yeah. So as a quarterback for a project, what does that look like?
It can look like a variety of things. So getting projects to the point where they're shovel ready. Almost every project in Michigan right now, if it serves whether to be for sale or for rent to anyone under what we call 120% area median income, right, our workforce population, every project requires some level of subsidy right now. Oftentimes our home builders and, our existing market has never required these kinds of grants and incentives, and they've never been offered to projects that serve this layer of demographics. So as we're kind of looking at expanding in housing need within the area and being able to deliver this, it's essentially me coming in and helping write grants, look at subsidy, connect them to the right stakeholders that they also need in the project, whether that's an advocacy layer at the state, maybe an environmental consultant. It can be very niche and specific or very, very broad.
Sure. So we're going to take it way back to the beginning because we skipped right over that and jumped right into the good stuff. So we've been doing this Housing Forward thing for a couple of years, and we're lucky to be able to work with both the Strosacker Foundation and the Midland Area Community Foundation to receive some funding support to do that. And so, obviously super happy to have your expertise here and supporting our community. But we get this question quite a bit, and I'll let you kind of start with it, and then I'll go back to the genesis of kind of why economic development for me. But why is housing economic development?
Well, housing is economic development because if we can't support our workforce and if we can't build a more resilient local tax base, we're not going to have a strong local economy. Right? We require talent, whether that's experienced professionals or young talent. And if we have a housing supply mismatch, or if we can't truly engage and retain talent, if they don't want to live here, we're not able to grow economically. It's very difficult to attract and retain companies from that standpoint. In addition, I would say it's really important for the strength of our local community and our rural communities to think about how their housing supply is invested into and really shepherds that growth in their community.
Sure, sure. So I'll share very quickly, and I've shared this, during different presentations, but Housing Forward really came about. Um, Actually, I shared this just last week. That Housing Forward is really as much of a genesis story as it is a death story. And so, 2 years into my role here, we had the opportunity to work on an economic development project that would have been, a couple hundred million in investment and moving 200 families into our community. And we were really excited about the project, as economic developers do get excited about those two metrics when a project comes forward. And what we found is that we couldn't meet the number of homes that were necessary to allow this investment to move forward. And even though it was a very strong candidate for investment, incentives, great land development, already, land reserved for that purpose, and all of those sorts of check boxes, we ultimately couldn't meet the need for housing for this particular company, and so ultimately lost that project to another community who could in fact meet those metrics. So when we get into this back and forth of why is housing really economic development, that's really what it comes back to, is in order to allow projects to move forward that might bring wonderful things to our community, we have to have the infrastructure, including housing, to be able to meet those needs. So
How many jobs do we lose out on? with that one?
200, yeah, 200 jobs. That one hurt.
What was the amount of investment?
300 million.
300 million and
Yeah.
200 jobs because we didn't have housing.
Correct. So average payroll for something like that, I think, is just under 18 million. So that our annual payroll would have been just under 18 million for that project. So that one hurt. And it really, forced us to take a look at infrastructure more broadly, right? We had to look at, not only housing, but childcare infrastructure. So when we talk about attracting projects or building projects, it isn't just about the pipes in the ground and the roadways and the land and all of those things are incentives. It also kind of goes back to who we are as a community. So yeah, thanks for letting me take that little foray. As far as Housing Forward goes, we have a pretty strong group of professionals that sit around the table with us. So our Housing Forward Leadership Council, do you want to maybe talk about that structure a little bit?
Yeah, our leadership council meets every quarter. We have a phenomenal group represented by realtors, appraisers, local lending community, community foundations, Habitat, and our nonprofit community also sit at the table. And it's really important because real estate's so multifaceted. No matter where we're looking, we want to make sure we're always taking that holistic approach and working with all areas of the community and saying, okay, what are the challenges that you're seeing? Are our current offerings, programs, data speaking to these exact challenges? Are we on the right path in terms of solutions, or do we need to do some tweaks or some right sizing? So we have a phenomenal group of area professionals that we check in with often.
Agreed. They are wonderful to have around the table. So I'm going to take it back a little bit personal. So you have operated Jennifer Acosta Development for 10 years. You've done some great things. So people might be asking, why in the world did you opt to stop or at least back burner some of those developments in lieu of this more public infrastructure, attainable housing piece?
Yeah. So for me, I love real estate development. The problem with real estate development is you're only able to change one property at a time, right? So I think I'm always looking at the community very broadly. My undergraduate's in sociology. I have a degree in international administration for my master's, and then another degree in real estate development. And I've taught and trained emerging developers for 8 years, and I'm usually hired by cities when I work for that nonprofit. So for me, I'm always looking at the broader system. And it's really incredible when I get to, fly across the country and go do some of this amazing work to coach communities along. But I'm doing that across the country and I'm not doing that at home.
Sure.
So for me, it's really a big piece of how can I have a stronger impact on the local community. And if you think about it, I'm now able to play for all these different development teams and do even more development work for a lot of projects versus just one of my own projects, which is far more rewarding.
Sure. Um, I didn't prep you for this question, but do you have a favorite
Do I have a favorite development?
development that you've done or a favorite project that or city you've worked with?
I mean, obviously redoing the legacy was a big project, right? It's the big, award winner. Really centered my work around that piece. But I'd say also doing Westwood here in Midland, doing, rehabbing those condos. The fact that my mom lives in one is very endearing. So I don't know that I have a favorite. I think you have like your oldest child that was like the most difficult to get through, and then you also have the second one that just seemed a lot easier.
Right. You know what to anticipate, at least to some extent.
Yeah, I mean they're all fantastic, and they all have a very different value proposition. I think that's one of the most exciting things is making sure they're all unique and they all have that different set. I think housing. And when we're talking about community building overall, communities are meant to be diverse and look like all of us. And being able to elevate the existing vernacular of a building or, redo a historic building, it's great. I think we don't want things to just look cookie cutter and homogenous. I often tell people, if you travel to a city, you go to someone's downtown, you go to the local business, you don't go to Applebee's, right? Everyone has their own Applebee's. So how do we really amplify everything that is unique about who we are as people?
Sure. And it shows our culture as a community, right?
Yeah.
I appreciate that. So you talked a little bit about housing stock and mismatched. And so as a fellow data nerd, I know that we have looked at this quite extensively.
Yeah.
I know we're also in anticipation of a new housing needs assessment in short order. But from what we looked at back in 2018 and what the data we've been able to kind of get into since then, can you talk a little bit about housing stock mismatch in our community?
Sure. One of the biggest areas we're really missing is smaller units, right? We need some housing, whether it's condos, rental, for sale, that's really going to be the 1 and 2 bedrooms. And it could be downtown, it doesn't have to be downtown, but really thinking about things that are visitable and accessible for people who are aging in place. We have a phenomenal stock of 3 and 4 bedroom units, but our household size is only 2.3 people in City Midland, 2.39 for the entire county. So our population hasn't changed significantly, but our household size has essentially been cut in half over recent decades, meaning we need twice as many homes for the same amount of people. And it means we have a lot of homeowners that are in 3 and 4 bedroom homes, but there's just 2 people living there, or maybe just 1 person living there. And we need attainable and affordable ways for them to go ahead and make that move so that we can attract new families into those homes.
Sure. We're going to wrap it up here in just a second, but I want to maybe just clear up any confusion on attainable versus affordable versus market rate, where Housing Forward kind of lives in that space.
Yeah.
And then maybe next time we chat, we can talk a little bit about the continuum, the housing continuum, but just maybe address very quickly attainable versus affordable.
Yeah, so affordable housing is typically 60% area median income and less. Area median income is a government statistic. 100% area median income would be if you take wages for everyone in the entire county before any taxes, benefits, anything is taken out, and you essentially split the county in half, right? So the true median. So anything 60% or less is what we call affordable housing. They might also need some additional services. It might be senior focused. There's a lot more there that the affordable housing agencies in Midland County really specialize and focus on. We look at what we call attainable housing, which is 80 to 120%. We really saddle that true median in the market. Anything over 120% is market rate. You can generally afford to compete and be able to purchase what you need in the housing market, whether it's for rent or for sale. But what we're seeing is more and more need for this, like 80% to 120%, really supporting the true majority around this median and supporting the companies that employ them by being able to make sure that we offer housing that fits their needs.
I appreciate that. Well, as always, I'm so grateful to have you in this ecosystem working in this space with me, and couldn't ask for a better, friend, partner, and colleague in this work. So thank you so much.
No, thank you. This is fun.